I never thought a dirty piano would lead to an unbelievable transformation. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. It was a day like any other when I stumbled upon that forsaken instrument in the dusty corner of my grandmother's attic. The air was thick with the smell of old wood and forgotten memories. I hesitated, my heart pounding in my chest. It was covered in dirt, and the keys looked like yellowed teeth, but somehow, I felt an undeniable pull. As I brushed my fingers across its surface, a chill skittered down my spine. The piano creaked, almost as though it were waking from a long sleep. There was a haunting beauty in its decay, a whisper of stories echoing through the dissonant notes that erupted when I pressed down on the keys, a symphony of sorrow and hope. My grandmother always said music had the power to change everything. But how could this broken instrument hold such promise? My fingers trembled as I played, the sound filling the cramped attic with a bittersweet melody. The music stirred something deep in my soul, igniting a flame I thought was long extinguished. I could almost see shadows dancing around me, lost souls from the past, clinging to the notes like lifebuoys in a stormy sea. Each note was a memory, a whisper of my grandmother's laughter, her hands gracefully moving over the keys in her prime. But then came the clamor of reality, the echoing laughter of my siblings downstairs. They didn't understand. They saw only an old, useless piano. I felt an ache to share my discovery with them, to show them the stories hidden beneath the dust. Yet, I stood alone, veiled in silence, trapped in my world of harmonies. Would they ever understand? The weight of their ignorance pressed against my chest like an iron chain. I was desperate to unveil the magic nestled within this neglected piano. I wiped a tear from my cheek, the frustration burning in my chest. The world outside thundered with the noise of life, but up here, I was cocooned in a realm of possibility or madness. Who knew what ancient secrets were trapped inside those keys? As the last note faded, I felt a shift. Something wasn't just wrong, it was foreboding. I leaned closer, my breath hitching in my throat. There, beneath the grime, was a faint inscription, barely legible. Unlock the truth, and behold the light. My heart raced. What truth? What could this hallowed piano reveal? Would my journey into its depths lead me to salvation or doom? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. I pressed my finger against the inscription, tracing the faint letters etched into the wooden frame. Unlock the truth, and behold the light. The words reverberated through the silence, an invitation wrapped in mystery. My heart thumped in response, suspicion brewing alongside a stream of eager anticipation. I stumbled backward, uncertainty gnawing at me. What did this mean? In the week since discovering the piano, I had delved into its past as it cradled my confusion, but I remained perched on a precipice, unsure if I dared to leap. After returning downstairs, I felt like an intruder in the chaos. Laughter cascaded down the hall, punctuated by the familiar bickering of my siblings. They clumped together in a bundle of camaraderie, a stark contrast to the isolation I fought against. I had hoped to share a piece of my discovery with them, but their smiles drove me deeper into isolation. What would they think of a crumbling old piano, just another relic cluttering the attic? As I made my way to my room, I caught snippets of their joy, the teasing jokes, the sounds of card games flipping through the air. A sudden, unbidden wave of longing washed over me, yet it collided hard against the walls I had erected to shield my vulnerability. Just then, there came a gentle knock at my door. I opened it to find my mother, her face soft with concern and curiosity. "Hey, you've been up there a lot lately. Everything all right?" Taking a deep breath, I hesitated, unsure whether I could bear to voice my turmoil. But the sincerity in her eyes ignited a flicker of courage within me. "I found an old piano," I finally confessed, lowering my gaze. "I think there's something special about it." Her expression changed slightly, intrigued. Oh? I remember your grandmother speaking fondly of music. She used to say it held magic. I looked up, maybe it was possible to channel my emotions. Perhaps that same magic could crack the fortress I felt entombed within. I think it might hold secrets, I whispered, the words nearly escaping my lips in fear. Secrets can be good or bad, she said softly, kneeling to meet my eyes. But they're often something we need to discover on our own. What do you think you'll find? Tears pricked at the corners of my vision, and surprisingly, instead of shame, I felt weightlessness. I'm scared it might just tear me apart. My mother placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. Sometimes uncovering these truths makes us feel more whole, not less. You're not alone in this, you know. And though I wanted to believe her assurance, the looming question of whether the piano would bring me closer to the truth or deeper into the shadows hung in the air. With my mother's departure, I felt an odd mixture of warmth and confusion. I went back to the attic, a steady pulse of uncertainty resonating within me. As I approached the piano, the ominous weight of its history enclosed me. I wiped the keys with trembling hands and pressed down, allowing a cascade of dissonance to fill the room, a mere reverberation of unseen turmoil. But before I could dwell too long on the chaos, I noticed a slight shift. Light burst into the attic through a crack in the wall, illuminating a corner I had never paid attention to. There, hidden in shadow, was an old, dust-covered music box laying atop a warped stool. Cautiously, I approached it, curiosity intertwining with apprehension. As I brushed off the dust, a sense of urgency compelled me to open it. But the moment I lifted the lid, a chill prickled my skin. Instead of a traditional tune, a haunting melody interwove with the dissonance of my piano. I gasped, consciousness tingling. It was an echo of the notes I had just played, familiar yet different, like half-formed memories clawing their way to the surface. Suddenly, I felt a thread pulling me into the music's undertow. Disturbingly, my instinct screamed for me to pull away, but my heart longed to reach deeper. I closed my eyes, surrendering to the sound, a whirlwind of emotions flooding me, in nostalgia, fear, an unbelievable yearning followed by a feeling of foreboding. As the last notes lingered and faded into silence, I opened my eyes to find the inscription flickering in my mind, a promise infused with dread. Unlock the truth, and behold the light. Just then, as if the universe had conspired against my resolve, an urgent pounding on the attic door made me jump. My heart raced as the door flew open, and my brother stumbled in, panic etched across his face. "You need to come downstairs. Now. Something's happened, and it's bad." Even as my heart fell into despair, I couldn't shake the feeling that the truth I sought had begun to unfurl. At that moment, I realized the depth of my journey stretched beyond a dusty piano. It was entwined with family, darkness, and choices looming just ahead. Would the piano guide me to what I needed, or was it merely the beginning of a storm more potent than I ever anticipated? The moment I stepped into the bustling chaos of the living room, the palpable tension settled thickly in the air. My siblings were huddled together, their expressions a mixture of disbelief and fear, while my parents faced each other, their brows furrowed with worry. The storm outside raged fiercely, rain battering against the windows as if echoing the tempest of confusion brewing inside me. "What happened?" I asked, my voice shaky, tearing my gaze away from the chaos and fixing it on my brother, whose alarmed expression seemed to mirror the pounding of my heart. He ran a hand through his disheveled hair, his breath coming in ragged bursts. "It's Dad, he got a call from the doctor. They found something," he might have his voice caught, each word splintering the air with a weight that was suffocating. "Found what?" I pressed, the world around me blurring under a haze of muffled shouts and urgent whispers. A silence descended, heavy and suffocating. My mother's eyes shimmered with tears she did not yet allow to fall. "It's serious, sweetheart. We need to be strong." My heart sank deeply into despair, the foundation of my own fears pressing in unyieldingly. The dissonance I had felt in the attic echoed louder in my minder tumult that now felt like a companion in my anguish. Moments stretched into what felt like hours, as their voices turned into a distorted hum, and I found myself drifting, lost amid the cacophony. The haunting melody from the music box lingered like a ghost, a reminder of the truths lurking just beyond grasp. In the shadows of my mind, it called out, a bittersweet promise mingled with loss. I wrung my hands, remembering the weight of my mother's reassurance in the attic. It felt so distant now, as though the world had shifted beneath me. I stepped back, seeking refuge in the knowledge that beneath this chaos, there could still be a thread of light. As I stood in the doorway, uncertain and trembling, I caught sight of an old family photo half hidden under overturned furniture. I crouched down, brushing the dust away with tender strokes. Our faces stared back at me, bright and unburdened, an image suspended in time, before secrets and shadows wove their web into our lives. Suddenly, my sister's voice cut through the fog. "What do we do?" The fragility of her tone spurred an unexpected sense of responsibility within me. Maybe the shadows whispering in the corners of my heart could lead to something more than despair. "We need to stay together," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "We need to support each other. We can't let this tear us apart." My brother nodded, though his eyes were clouded with fear. "But Dad is going to need more than just us," he murmured, almost defeated. "He'll need hope." "He should be hope," I interrupted, a spark igniting within me. "There's hope in music, in the stories our family holds. We can channel that. We can remind him of who he is." And with each declaration, as if the universe were listening, a small flicker of courage began to blaze within me. I remembered the piano, that instrument infused with ancestral echoes, seemingly forgotten but pulsating with strength, waiting for the right moment to be heard. "Let's go to the attic," I urged, determination clawing its way past my trepidation. "We can gather the family songs. There's magic there, I promise. It might help him." Though my siblings exchanged uncertain glances, a flicker of hope stirred in their eyes. My brother spoke first, hesitantly. "Okay, let's give it a try." The climb to the attic felt like a pilgrimage, each step drawing us closer to the heart of the family's history. As we entered the dusty room, the air felt charged with an energy that vibrated in anticipation. I hurried to the piano, my fingers twitching to find the familiar keys beneath them. The moment I placed my fingers on the keys, a warmth surged through me. With a nod from my siblings, I began playing the haunting melody from the music box, the notes spilling forth like fragile glass orbs bursting into life. They layered themselves atop one another, forming a tangled thread of memory and emotion that resonated through the wooden beams. Uncertainty hung about us, yet I felt the presence of something greater at play. The flow of emotion riveted each of us as they cascaded through the vibrations, like stories long held, aching to be told. I could envision Dad sitting there, an anchor in a storm, but then, before I could play further, there was a sudden crash, and the attic door flung open violently. My mother stood in its archway, panic etched upon her face. "You need to come back down now." Her urgency electrified the air, amplifying the adrenaline already coursing through my veins. "What is it?" I managed to choke out. "There's been an accident." Another jarring moment of silence seemed to stretch infinitely, anchors of dread tethering us to fear. The doctor called again. It's worse than we thought. They want to see us immediately." A hollow ache settled deep within me, an unforeseen depth of despair clawing at my insides. I staggered backward, colliding with the piano, their embodiment of hope beginning to slip through my fingers like grains of sand. Confusion, fear, and a dawning realization pitched together in my mind, colliding with the lingering echo of the music box's haunting melody. The threads of our lives felt frayed, unraveling right before our eyes. Could I harness the truth and the music in time? As my family gathered around me, the warmth of their presence crashed against the despair gnawing at my heart. But what truth awaited us? And could music truly bridge the chasms we were about to face? Moments blurred and a chilling realization dawned anew that the real journey, the one we never anticipated, was just beginning. The urgency of my mother's words wrapped around me like a vice, tightening the grip of fear in my chest as we stumbled down the attic stairs. My siblings followed closely, an unspoken bonding of solidarity linking us as we descended into the chaos of our reality. The living room had transformed into a battlefield of anxiety, the storm outside now a mere whisper compared to the tempest raging inside our home. My father sat hunched on the sofa, a picture of fragility, his hands clasped tightly together as if holding onto something. My heart lurched at the sight of him, a steadfast rock, now appearing so vulnerable and small. What happened? I asked, swallowing hard against the lump that had solidified in my throat. The question felt weak, inadequate in the face of the palpable fear surrounding us. The doctor found more, Mom replied, her voice trembling despite her best efforts to appear composed. They did some tests and needs to see us. Hey, concerned it may have spread. A sharp intake of breath was all the response I could muster, shock flooding my veins like ice water. Behind me, I felt my siblings' presence, each one grappling with their own emotions, and I could sense the heaviness in the air, clinging to us like a shroud. We can't lose him, my sister whispered, her voice quaking with uncharacteristic soft-spoken terror. We can't. No, we won't, I said, the words tumbling out before I could think. We're going to fight. He needs us, and we must be there for him. As my mother sat beside my father, gently brushing a hand over his shoulder, a flicker of resolve ignited within me. In that moment, I made a silent promise whatever lay ahead, we would face it together. Family was our greatest treasure, and through the torment, I could feel the glimmer of something Maria determination that we would find light even in the darkest corners. Within the whirlwind of emotion, I suddenly remembered our childhood tradition of creating a memory jar. Each year, we would write down our happiest moments, fold the notes up, and drop them into an old glass jar. It had become a treasured custom, a way to capture our laughter in times when sadness threatened to overpower us. Let's recreate the memory jar, I suggested, surprising even myself with the idea. We could gather our favorite memories of Dad. Just this last Christmas, how he taught us to play that silly game with the terrible jokes, how he was unstoppable even when he... My voice faltered, but my siblings' eyes gleamed with recognition. That's perfect. My brother exclaimed, his eyes lighting up as if he had just discovered a hidden treasure. We could write down what we admire about him, remind him of how many lives has touched. What we were offering felt beyond mere sentimental trinkets. It was a testament to the strength of our love and the resilience that defined our family. We quickly gathered pens and a stack of colored paper, our fingers flying across the pages as laughter and tears mingled in the air. As I wrote about my father's fabled pancakes on Saturday mornings, I felt a weight beginning to lift. Memories flowed freely: the spectacular camping trips, the impromptu dance parties, his unwavering support through every failure, every triumph. This was the narrative of our family, sewn together through moments of joy. The storm outside had decreased to a gentle patter, the soft rhythm playing a comforting backdrop to our collective effort. I caught a glance of my father from the corner of my eye, and despite the seriousness of the situation, I could see a flicker of something: recognition, perhaps, or the spark of joy at the sound of our voices. As we completed our notes, my brother came up with an idea. Let's read them to him. We need to remind him of all the love surrounding him. Nerves twisted through me at the thought. What if he couldn't respond? What if the weight of his diagnosis dug too deeply into his spirit, extinguishing the flickers of joy we hoped to rekindle? Moments stretched into minutes as we shared snippets of laughter and kindness, reaching deep into the heart of who he was. Each note unveiled our admiration, how he taught us to believe in ourselves and to chase dreams relentlessly. Just as my other sister began to read aloud her note, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. My father's phone buzzed loudly on the coffee table, cutting through the fragile laughter like a knife. Not now, Mom whispered as my father reached for it slowly, his brow knitted with concern. He glanced at the screen and his expression shifted suddenly ashen. It's the doctor's office. A collective gasp filled the room, fear circulating through us like electricity. Maybe it's only a follow-up, I offered, forcing an encouraging smile despite the dread curling in my gut, knowing full well it was far from a certainty. The air grew thick with tension as he took a deep breath and accepted the call. "I'll walk outside to breathe," my father murmured, standing. Just a moment. We watched him move, the moment suspended as if time itself had held its breath. He stepped into the hallway, and I caught a glimpse of the flickering light through the window, an example of the hope we all clung to despite our fears. And then, silence enveloped us, an uncomfortable blanket that threatened to suffocate. My heart raced as I exchanged worried glances with my siblings. Moments stretched indefinitely. And it was then that I realized this was no ordinary call. The weight of unspoken words hung heavily in the air, each second a chasm growing wider between hope and despair. What did the doctor want? The answer unraveled through the slow shuffle of my father's footsteps, and a chilling realization gripped me. It was potentially a turning point, promising new revelations that could alter the trajectory of our lives irrevocably. As he returned, there was no mistaking the heaviness in his eyes. A wave of dread washed over me, and the flicker of hope I'd clutched fell perilously close to dimming. I instinctively moved closer to my siblings, our bond drawing tighter as uncertainty swirled. "Dad, what did they say?" I managed to ask, my voice barely above a whisper. He inhaled deeply, the air crackling with tenseness, and in that fractured moment, our family stood on the precipice of revelation. What awaited us on the other side loomed like an unseen storm, one we had yet to fully comprehend. The moment hung heavily in the air, like the storm clouds that had finally released their grasp on the world outside. I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears as my father stood there, poised on the threshold of uncertainty. Each breath he took seemed to echo the words I dreaded the most. My siblings held their collective breath, our shared fear knitting us closer together. "Dad?" My brother prompted, his voice trembling slightly. "Sit down," he said, his tone taut. His eyes flickered briefly to the memory jar we had just crafted, each colorful slip a testament to our shared love. Perhaps he had seen through the smiles we had stitched together, recognizing how thinly they masked the fear beneath. As we settled back onto the couch, the warmth of solidarity dissipated in the chill of the moment. My father finally spoke, but his voice felt muffled, as if he were trapped in a fog. "The doctors found something worse than they expected. There's more involvement, and they want to start chemotherapy soon." Even as he shared the news, I could see the reality breaking through, sharp and jagged, much like shattered glass. An involuntary gasp escaped my sister's lips, and I felt the tears pooling in my eyes, ready to break loose. "Chemo?" My voice came out hoarse, the word feeling foreign and stark in the warm light of our living room. I looked around, searching for an anchor amidst the overwhelming tide of fear. How bad is it?" He hesitated, struggling to find the words. "They're concerned about the efficacy of treatment." I might not respond well. The ground felt as though it had shifted beneath my feet. I watched my siblings, their faces slack with shock, and knew I had to say something. "Whatever it takes, Dad, we'll fight this. We're all here, with you." There it was again, that resolve sparking, flickering in the face of despair. Yet doubt slithered around my heart. What if this fight cost us everything we held dear? What if his frail body couldn't withstand the intensity ahead? A gentle hand rested on my shoulder, pulling me back from that precipice of despair. It was my brother, his gaze fixed on my father, undeterred. "You've always taught us to persevere. We'll do that together." The heaviness in the room remained, but something shifted ever so slightly. The air grew thicker yet warmer, infused with threads of tenacity. We were a family forged in resilience, and I could feel the spark of hope rekindling at the edges, even if it felt too fragile to hold. "Let's just take it one step at a time," my father said, his voice gaining strength. He reached for my mother's hand, their fingers intertwining like roots anchoring against a storm. "We're going to create a plan, stay positive." The familiar cadence of his voice lulled something inside me, even as dread loomed on the horizon. I spoke before I thought again. "Can we bring back our tradition? Only this time, introduce something new. Let's also write down what we want to do together during treatment, a list of things that'll make you smile, things you've always wanted to do. Let's keep the laughter alive." He nodded gently, a faint smile appearing through the shadows. "I like that. How about our first outing be to that restaurant I've always talked about? The one with the ridiculously large desserts." A ripple of laughter surfaced among us, brightening the shadows. My brother piped up, "And can we play the terrible joke game again? I think jokes about puns are especially timely." "Yes." My sister clapped her hands, her worry momentarily quelling as her smile erupted. "I bet that'll lift your spirits." Even as we gathered ideas, a shadow of doubt crept in. Would it truly help? Would laughter still flourish amidst the weight of reality? Just as I found a glimmer of assurance, an unwelcome noise sliced through the air, the shrill trill of my father's phone again, its persistent insistence shrouded in a sense of foreboding. With a hesitant look towards us, he answered, but the sparkle of connection that once filled the room seemed to dim further. "Hello?" Yes, this is he." The change in his demeanor was immediate, his brow furrowed, eyes widening slightly. The color drained from his face, and dread seeped back into our hearts. "Excuse me," he said, a tremor in his voice that reverberated through the silence. Don't understand." A chill raced through me as I watched him step out again, his hand gripping the phone like a lifeline that felt more dangerous than secure. The weight of the unexpected words began pressing down on us, spiraling our brief flicker of hope into an abyss once again. "What do we do now?" I whispered, my voice shaking. The laughter, the memories, it suddenly felt trivial in the face of the unknown, and then, as if the world were colluding against our fragile peace, the doorbell rang, echoing through the tension. It felt like an absurd intrusion, yet one glance at each other told us we couldn't ignore it this time. "Should we?" my brother began, but no one knew how to finish the sentence. With reluctant resolve, I stood. We were on the precipice once more, teetering between the weight of despair and the uncertain promise of the unknown. Together, we moved towards the door, a blend of excitement and apprehension coiling in my stomach. As I reached for the doorknob, the truth hovered just beyond the threshold, a revelation that could alter everything we thought we knew about the journey ahead. With a deep breath, I opened the door, bracing myself for whatever awaited us on the other side, a startling reminder that sometimes the greatest transformations emerge from the most unexpected moments. The door creaked open, revealing a figure silhouetted against the fading evening light. I squinted, trying to decipher the face of the unexpected visitor, my heart racing with a strange mix of hope and trepidation. "Mr. Thompson?" I stammered, recognizing him from our neighborhood, a friendly neighbor whose name had floated through the air during idle conversations at community gatherings. He stood there, shovel in hand, looking as if he had just come from some kind of laborious undertakings. "Oh, yes." He smiled softly, the kindness in his eyes an anchor against the storm that raged within me. "I heard about your family situation from Mrs. Garcia. I just wanted to drop by and offer my help. Anything, really." Just a couple of houses down, his simplicity overwhelmed me. Here was a man standing at our doorstep, willing to share his time, his effort, to ease our burden. For a moment, the weight of our reality tilted slightly, the edges of despair softened. "Thank you," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "but I don't know what we need, just maybe some company, then?" He suggested. "And if you have any handyman tasks, I can take care of those too. I'll happily clean your gutters or whatever else you need." Someone else reaching out in kindness felt like breathing fresh air after being submerged. But before I could pull him inside, my father stepped back into the room, the phone still pressed to his ear. The light that had found its way back into our lives moments ago began flickering. "Can I call you back?" he said, his voice steadier but tinged with tension. The glimmer of hope that had sparked with Mr. Thompson's arrival fizzled out again as my father grasped the air around him like a drowning man, desperately clawing for stability. "What's going on, Dad?" I asked, my tone edged with urgency. He held up a hand, signaling for quiet as he listened to the voice on the other end. The silence wrapped around us, heavier than before. My siblings exchanged worried glances, their faces taut with confusion. "Okay, yes, I understand," my father finally replied, his voice subdued. The corners of his mouth twitched, as if fighting the desire to smile or cry, and he ended the call quickly, setting the phone down as if it was a volatile object. "It's the hospital," he said, eyes darting toward my mother, who stood frozen in her own reservoir of fear. "They found a clinical trial. One the doctors think might be worth trying." But his voice cracked, falling into a void. "It's experimental, and they can guarantee its success." A minute passed, but it felt eternal. My siblings remained hushed, while the walls seemed to constrict around us, holding our hearts captive within their confines. I darted a glance back at Mr. Thompson, who remained patiently by the door, his presence grounding. "Do we have to decide anything right now?" my sister asked, her voice small, barely daring to scrape against the surface of uncertainty. "Can we think about it? Of course, darling," my father replied, his tone now softer, the rush of pragmatism splintering against the flux of emotions pouring out. "I just wanted you all to know what we're facing." "You deserve to know. Knowing is heavy, Dad," I interrupted, the frustration bubbling within me. "How can they expect us to absorb it all?" "Life isn't simply fair," he said, and then he fell silent, the gravity settling back into the room like an anchor we could not lift. My heart ached with what it meant, the road ahead felt treacherous, laden with difficult choices that could change everything. As the silence began to wrap back around us, I turned my gaze back to Mr. Thompson. "Do you play the piano?" The question burst forth unexpectedly. "Why, yes, I do. A little rusty, but I have a soft spot for music," he replied, his smile returning. "Why do you ask?" Because I hesitated, the impulse to merge talents surfacing. "We're holding on to some hope here, and maybe we need a piano break amidst all this uncertainty." "Absolutely. I'd be honored." He stepped inside, shaking off the remnants of his day, welcoming the warmth like an old friend. In an instant, he found himself in the corner of our living room, an old upright piano that had resided there since my father's own childhood suddenly becoming the centerpiece of our attention. My mother exhaled, their eyes meeting, an understanding sparked like the initial kindle of a flame. Mr. Thompson sat on the piano bench, the weight of the world fading beneath his fingers as he struck a few notes that rang clear and bright against the shadows. Slowly, he began to play a piece, something light-hearted yet heartfelt, and as he did, I could feel the thick air between us start to shift. One by one, we ventured closer. The music sank into our bodies, infiltrating the spaces of sorrow and suffocation, crafting little doors through which we could slip in laughter, a deeper connection, a way of reminding ourselves that even in some of the darkest moments, we could still feel something reminiscent of joy. We began to hum along to the melody, our voices weaving together, tremulous yet spirited. Even my father, caught in the midst of battling fear, found a small, tentative smile tugging at the corner of his lips as he perched himself alongside my mother, swaying lightly to the rhythm. But amid the lullaby of transient beauty, the shadows never fully retreated. From out of nowhere, a loud crash erupted from the kitchen, startling us all. We turned, hearts racing once again, anxiety flaring up like fireworks. Something had shattered, and whatever fragment of hope we had restored felt fragile at best, like glass that was just waiting to be fractured once more. "I'll check it," I stammered, desperate to push back against the overwhelming tide of expectations and fear. As I made my way to the kitchen, sensing my family's apprehension trailing behind me, a chill skated across my skin. I paused with each step, knowing that answers awaited me on the other side, answers I may not have been ready to face. With each breath, the weight of everything cradled in my heart burgeoned heavier, and as I peered around the corner, I wondered not if it was one broken plate that awaited. It felt like all our worlds clashing louder than ever. The kitchen lay in chaos, a singular, heavy platter family heirloom, no less had met an unfortunate fate. It lay splintered on the floor, its once proud beauty reduced to fragments that glinted like shards of lost memories. I felt the weight of that plate in the pit of my stomach, as if it was a symbol of our unraveling, a reminder that everything beautiful could shatter in an instant. "Are you okay in there?" My father's voice floated through the doorway, laced with concern and edged with the semblance of authority. I was not simply dealing with a shattered plate, we were grappling with the fragility of our whole existence. With a deep breath, I knelt, carefully gathering the pieces, each one a reminder of happier times when our family could sit down for meals without the looming shadow of illness. "Just a plate," I called back, knowing full well that words seldom captured the reality behind them. The truth swirled around me like dust motes in the air. Just a plate, yes, but it carried the weight of too many moments still suspended over us. Moments filled with laughter and stories my mother used to tell about its history, how it had survived generations only to end here. Now. As I bended down to sweep the last of the shattered porcelain into a dustpan, a soft hand appeared beside mine. It was Mr. Thompson, a gentle smile still lingering on his lips. "Let me help you with that," he said, his voice like a soothing balm against the gathering storm in my heart. Together, we swept the remnants of our shattered memories into quiet acceptance. My siblings entered slowly, drawn by the sound of our movements, the air thick with uncertainty but softened by shared purpose. They crouched beside us, silence engulfing our little circle as we latched onto this unexpected moment of unity. Even amid destruction, we were here, together, bonded by loss and desperate to create something new. "It's just a plate," I repeated aloud, as if needing to convince myself as my eyes started to sting with unshed tears. "But it feels like more. Mr. Thompson nodded solemnly. "Every object carries a story, a weight. It's okay to feel hurt over losing it." His words resonated within me, like far-off echoes that became clearer with each passing moment. We had all lost pieces of our lives, but those losses weren't the end, they weren't the final chapter, they were a part of something larger. As we accumulated the shards, I caught a glimpse of my sister's eyes, glistening with contemplation. She quietly lifted one of the larger pieces, a purple flower embedded in its surface, its beauty marred but still visible like us. "Can we do something with these?" she asked, her voice a whisper but filled with purpose. "Maybe turn them into something new? A mosaic," or her thought trailed off, but we all could see the spark of hope flickering within. "I love that idea," I replied, eager to latch onto any thread of light to guide us from this darkness. "Let's get some glue and cardboard," my brother chimed in, excitedly rushing to the craft supplies cabinet. The small flames of creativity sparked within us, instilling the room with a warmth that chased the shadows momentarily. As the four of us gathered to piece together our mosaic masterpiece, laughter returned to our hearts, echoing against the warmth of the piano's music that still floated in from the other room. Each shard we placed became a testament to resilience, each moment tangled with hope forming anew, stitching the seams of our reality back together in the most unexpected way. But just as our excitement began to build amid the laughter and the gentle tug, a familiar urgent knock echoed through the house, cutting through our solace like a cool wind slicing through summer warmth. I stilled, glancing toward the front door, uncertainty settling back in like a familiar enemy. Dad batted his eyes towards the kitchen, a fleeting fear etched into his features, each of us aware that sometimes, unexpected visitors didn't come with good news. "I'll get it," I said sturdily, pushing off the momentary surge of dread coursing through me. As I stepped toward the living room, I dared to hope that perhaps this time, the visitor would carry the weight of something good, something heartening to outweigh the darkness that constantly grazed at the edges of our lives. I opened the door and a wave of cold air rushed past me, bringing with it a figure I had not expected, me estranged aunt, someone I hadn't spoken to in years, her expression unreadable, as if she bore secrets yet withheld. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice trembling but steady, and in that fragile moment, I felt the ground beneath me shift again. In the storm of our struggle, yet another complication threatened to unfold. I hesitated, the shock of her arrival sending a ripple through the fragile fabric of joy we had just begun to weave in the kitchen. My aunt's presence felt like a fog rolling in over the sea, thick and uncertain, obscuring the beautiful panorama we had momentarily reclaimed. Words circled my mind, each one grappling for space, but none seemed adequate to express a welcome that would acknowledge the years between us. "Okay," I finally whispered, stepping aside to let her in. She crossed the threshold into a home that felt both familiar and foreign, her eyes darting around, drinking in the remnants of our familial chaos and makeshift healing. "2 just came to see how you're doing," she stammered, her resolve wavering. She looked older than I remembered, the weight of time etched into the lines around her eyes. But there was something else, a deeper mark, as if she had borne witness to things I could not imagine. I closed the door behind her, shutting out the cold, but several layers of apprehension lingered just beneath the surface. "It's been tough," I admitted as I led her into the living room. The air between us was thick, saturated with unspoken grievances and years of absence. I could feel the tension radiating off her, a mix of sorrow and hope that suffocated me with possibility but left me almost paralyzed with indecision. "Why now?" I blurted out, the question spilling from my lips before I could rein it in. Her gaze fell, tracing the edges of the old furniture. "I've heard about your mother," she confessed, her voice quivering. I felt I should reach out. My heart tightened at the mention of my mother, still a raw nerve in our family. The news had traveled fast, but hearing it from her felt like a betrayal, a reminder of her absence from our lives just when we needed each other the most. "You could have reached out sooner," I shot back, the hurt spilling over into bitterness. "I know. I can't change the past. I thought maybe it was better if I stayed away." I didn't know how to help. There was a vulnerability in her voice that caught me off guard, and I felt my anger slacken slightly. I glanced back toward the kitchen, where my siblings remained deeply invested in the shards before them, laughter blending with the soft piano melodies that had filled our home with comfort. In that moment, I wanted nothing more than to join them, to let the buoyancy of joy sweep me off my feet, but I found myself here, standing with a woman who felt like a ghost of what could have been. "Did you know?" I pressed, my voice lowering to a near whisper. "Did you know about her illness?" She inhaled sharply, shaking her head. "I didn't know until it was too late." I was worried. Worried? The bitterness lifted as swiftly as a wave crashing down, replaced by an ache so profound it shook me. For her? For yourself? Or both? In our family, emotions had always been a tangled web, and I'd worn mine carefully, like an armor against the world that was so eager to judge. My aunt's eyes glimmered as if reflecting the very mosaic we had tried to create moments ago. Both, I suppose. I didn't realize how hard it had become, how much pain was hidden beneath the surface. A section of myself softened at her admission, perhaps grasping at an understanding that all of us were just human, fumbling through a labyrinth of heartbreak and regret. You could still be here now, I murmured, the edges of this conversation fraying at the seams, peeling away layers of resentment I did not know I carried. Can we start again? She asked, her eyes pleading for a fragile chance to rebuild. I want to help you, help your family. I want our family to be whole again, in whatever way that looks now. I felt the warmth of hope begin to flicker within me, kindling the darkness. Perhaps this was the unexpected kindness I had hoped to find on the other side of a shattered plate. Before I could answer, a sudden shout from the kitchen startled us both. Hey! Come look at this! My brother's voice rang through, an excited urgency tinged with something profound. Let's see what they found, I said quietly. Glancing back at my aunt, ready to piece together moments of joy, even if the fragments themselves remained jagged. Together, we moved toward the kitchen, the distance between our past and present narrowing just slightly, a bridge that maybe, just maybe, we could walk across together. However, as we stepped into the warm glow of the kitchen, laughter frozen in the air, my heart sank into an icy dread. On the table lay a shimmering piece of a broken plate, but it was not the piece we made our plans around. It was a delicate shard, etched with a date and a name, my mother's name, a hidden story erupting like fire from an unquenchable source. Caught between shock and curiosity, my aunt and I exchanged glances, bracing ourselves for revelations that were far from what either of us had anticipated. In that moment, hovering on the edge of the familiar chaos, I realized that some stories were just beginning. The air grew heavy, a silence settling over the kitchen that felt charged with anticipation. I could see my siblings frozen in their glee, their faces alight with discovery, but mine was overwhelmed by a swell of questions that crashed like thunder around me. What does that mean? I whispered, shaking the fog of disbelief that clouded my mind. My aunt stepped forward, her eyes widening as she leaned down to examine the shard more closely, the lines of worry deepening across her brow. I don't know, she murmured, her voice trembling as my brother lifted the shard, tilting it toward the light. It glinted sharply in the glow of the overhead lamp, and I could see the intricate design that had once adorned the plate, exquisite, beautiful, but now only a fragment. My sister crept closer, her small fingers brushing against the intricate pattern, unaware of the gravity woven into the history of the plate and what it represented. Is it Mom's? She asked, her innocence cutting through the tension. I swallowed hard, my heart racing. It must be. But how? As if in response, my brother's eyes gleamed with the spark of curiosity, the taste of an unfinished story tempting him into this uncharted territory. There's got to be more of it somewhere. Let's look. He encouraged, already searching the chaotic remains of our breakage. I watched him, the urgency of his excitement bringing me back to the surface, like a lifeline thrown into stormy waters. Wait, I said. Before we dive in, what if this is something we shouldn't disturb? My words fell from my mouth like stones, heavy with the weight of hidden truths, but my aunt's hand on my shoulder felt reassuring, stabilizing. It's important that you understand your mother, even in the fragments left behind. Her expression was earnest, and as she glanced at the shard once more, I felt the unspoken truth creeping its way into our lives, as inevitable as the tide. What does the date say? My sister demanded, gripping the counter as her eyes darted across the table. I stepped closer, my heart a cacophony of dread and curiosity. My brother turned the shard for us to see, and there it was, a date inscribed alongside my mother's name, a date I recognized but had never understood until now. Her birthday? My sister whispered, voice hushed in reverence, but as memories brushed the periphery of my mind, I pulled back. No, it can't be. It's too early. She wouldn't have. Maybe it was something special? My brother suggested, scanning our expressions for clues, breaking the tension with insecurities of his own. She was hiding things from us, I finally confessed, the truth nearly knocking the wind out of me. I thought we knew everything. But there's so much we don't. The air crackled with the weight of that revelation, the budding connections pulled taut with possibility. My aunt's breathing grew shallow beside me, and I sensed the turmoil roiling within her as her thoughts spiraled deeper, tethered to the years spent away from us, away from my mother. Maybe we should put this together, she proposed softly, her hand instinctively moving toward the remnants scattered across the other end of the table. Finding the pieces might lead us to something important. Yes. Like a treasure hunt. My brother exclaimed, already scuttling to gather more shards, encouraged by the hints of enthusiasm scattered around, and yet, a creeping doubt nestled in my chest, refusing to quiet. What if these pieces unveiled more pain than we were prepared to carry? What if the estrangement and years of absence held a weight we could never lift? I hesitated, tethered to my aunt's hopeful energy but pulled back by fears of what we might discover. I don't know if we can handle this all at once, I murmured, the lump in my throat barely allowing words to escape. What if it leads to something we can't fix? An unspoken fear flared. What if uncovering our mother's buried treasures meant exposing the fractures of our family even wider? But my aunt placed her hand gently on my arm, grounding me with her warmth. We are here together now. Whatever we uncover, we can face it as a family. We don't have to be alone in this. Unfortunately, the very thought of vulnerability filled me with panic. I turned back to the shard, studying the intricate designs. It felt less like a piece of my mother's past and more like a gateway into her untold story. Just as new doubts flared, my brother's eager voice shattered the tension, interrupting the swell of unresolved conflict. Hey! I found this too. He emerged from the depths of the cluttered kitchen with another piece, opaque and fragile, revealing a small inscription on the back, one that seemed to kindle an unspoken promise. Before I could read it, however, my sister's sharp intake of breath pierced the air, and she pointed toward the doorway. My heart dropped into my stomach as I turned to see a shadow crossing the threshold, a figure suspended in the doorway, face unreadable but suffused with a sense of foreboding. My mother's absence hung like a ghost in the room, the reality that our discoveries might tie us together but also unearth an undeniable truth we were not prepared to face lingering like a shroud. As the figure stepped into the light, I took a step back, awareness sweeping through me like a tidal wave, crashing over the fragile safety we had begun to construct. We were no longer just a family piecing together remnants, we were unraveling secrets that could shatter us anew. And as the figure moved further into view, everything I thought I knew teetered on the brink of a heartbreaking revelation, ready to crash down upon us like the broken pieces of a once whole story. I stared, my breath caught in my throat. The figure lingering at the doorway was not merely a shadow of the past. I recognized him immediately. It was my father's brother, my Uncle Peter, who had distanced himself from our family following a bitter feud. The man had once been a part of our laughter, a player in our stories, yet time and silence had cast him as a stranger. "What are you doing here?" I managed to choke out, the words tearing from deep within me like an uninvited guest at a gathering of hurt. Family was supposed to be a sanctuary, not more shrapnel from moments we could barely fathom. Peter's gaze drifted across the room, landing first on my siblings, who had stopped their treasure hunt, the excitement wiped clean from their faces. He inhaled slowly and stepped forward, defiance mingling with vulnerability. "I came as soon as I heard," he said, his voice steady despite the tension that hung thick in the air. "I want to talk about your mother, about everything." A shared frown flickered among us. My siblings shifted uncomfortably, glancing at each other, unsure how to respond to this unexpected presence. It hit me then just how deeply rooted the aching silence was. It was like a bitter taste I couldn't shake off, the taste of separation left to settle between us like dust. "Why now?" I asked, the anger curdling in my stomach. "After everything? After all those years?" I was afraid, he admitted, and there was a tremor in his voice that felt like an echo of my own buried fears. Afraid of what it might mean to confront the past. "Don't you think we're all afraid?" I blurted out, prisoners to the weight of unspoken fears. "Don't you think we've been holding on to more than we can bear? If you're here for some kind of absolution, you can save your words," my uncle retorted, pain threading his tone, but something in his expression softened. I came to make amends, and to want to tell you about something I've kept secret for too long." When he spoke those words, a tremor rippled through the very fabric of our ordeal. My mother had been the magnetic force binding us, and her absence had sent roots of confusion spiraling into the ground of our existence. Whatever he was about to share could unravel everything as sow new seeds of hope. "Mom never wanted you to be cut out of our lives," I exclaimed softly, a shard of longing slipping through my voice. "She thought you were gone for good." Peter lowered his gaze, the shame palpable. "There are truths I couldn't face," he whispered. For a moment, I thought I saw something flicker deep within his eyes, a wish for forgiveness intertwined with regret, a longing to bridge the canyon that had separated us. "What do you know about her illness?" I pressed, desperation clawing at my conscience. The urge to protect the remnants of our family urged me onward. "It's not just her illness," he confessed, stepping closer. "Your mother, she had reasons for her distance from me. Things you don't know. There were letters she wrote about you all." We were all tense now, drawn into a shared breath of uncertainty, the air craving the weight of truth bubbling just beneath the surface. "Letters?" my brother echoed, as if hoping that the very mention of forgotten words could offer answers. "I found them when she was first diagnosed," Peter continued, his voice barely a whisper. "She wanted to account for every moment she missed, every regret she had. But Tu didn't know how to bring it all back. I thought it would be easier to stay away." The silence that followed felt electric, charged with anticipation. "What do you mean?" my sister asked slowly, cautious yet undeniably intrigued. "Did she give you messages for us?" My uncle sighed, sadness lining his features. "Yes, and I should have delivered them when I had the chance." If I had known, his words faltered, the truth hanging like heavy fruit on a trembling tree. Suddenly, I felt an intense urge to protect my family from any new heartache that could arise from this tangled web of lost letters and confused loyalties. "But what could your excuses possibly mean for us now?" The moment felt explosive, a cauldron bubbling with emotion, secrets that once lay dormant now threatening to spill over. Peter drew in a breath, preparing to plunge into the depths of his truth. "There's a letter for each of you," he said firmly. "One for you, for your brother, and for your sister too. And I found them during my own battle with regrets." "What do you mean?" my brother asked, confusion mingling with urgency. "Where are they?" "I wrote them in response to vows I made when she fell ill," Peter said. "I promised to take care of you all if anything ever happened. I never got it right, but I still breathed the weight of our shared past, every note shed composed. I was waiting to find the right moment." The reality of his words bore down on me, a heaviness that struck at the core of who we were. "You held our past within those letters," I said quietly, feeling the tears welling up in my eyes. "You held her love, and we missed it." For the first time, I watched the vulnerability pool deep in Peter's eyes, the shame shifting, giving way to sorrow. "I came here to say sorry," he choked out, the solidarity glinting between us tenuously. "I should have never let bitterness take my place in your lives." Just then, the air itself shifted, gentle but profound, an invisible thread weaving itself through the chaos. In that moment, we weren't just a concoction of heartbreak and anger, we were all searching for the silver lining, yearning to harbor a shred of unity amid the storm. If there was one thing I had learned throughout this journey, it was how we hung onto the threads of family, each strand woven through moments of joy and sorrow. I took a step forward, my heart swelling with that fierce determination. "Let's find those letters then," I said resolutely, looking to my siblings. "Let's find a way to honor her together. No more secrets." Peter nodded slowly, sensing my willingness to dismantle the walls that had long kept us apart. "I'll guide you," he offered softly. "But we need to dig to uncover the pain and the love intertwined." As we turned back toward the kitchen and the scattered remnants of the plate, we were not left with just the specters of loss. Instead, we found ourselves festooned with a shared promise of discovery rooted in love that was waiting to shine through the cracks of our brokenness. The tension shifted as laughter began to bubble once again, soft smiles emerging among us. My heart raced with the adrenaline of shared purpose, a sensation I hadn't felt in far too long. "Let's collect the pieces, shall we?" I asked my siblings, my resolve anchored by the powerful shift happening within our family. They nodded, fingers brushing past shards like a tentative dance, a connection forged anew. Together, we celebrated our mosaic, led against the soundtrack of laughter and unfinished melodies, the warmth of rekindled memories lighting our journey. As Peter joined in, the music from the piano swelled through the walls of our home, intertwining with our hopes and fierce, a symphony that would guide us through the shadows. There, among laughter, we stood alongside each other, ready to rediscover the truths that had once bound us, stronger and more beautiful than ever before. Let's face whatever comes next together, I said finally, my voice steadying in the wake of whispers from the past, aware that ours was a story still in the making. And with that quiet declaration, we began to build our new narrative, the letters from the past, a roadmap to healing, woven together, vibrant and resilient, leading us forth into the light beyond the shadows.